Dear all, welcome to this panel called Climate Action in Higher Education. My name is Luisa Fernanda Villamizar, the International Relations Coordinator at ASCUN. On behalf of Fundación Universitaria del Área Andina, Universidad Autónoma del Caribe, Universidad Autónoma de Bucaramanga, Universidad Pedagógica y Tecnológica de Colombia, and the Colombian Association of Universities ASCUN, we want to extend kind greetings for being part of the discussion panel. The meeting was organized by ASCUN with the support of Partners of the Americas, our ally, and will be held in English with the option of translation into Spanish on the Zoom platform. This session will be held via streaming on YouTube channel as well. I would like to introduce our panelists, and we would like to say thank you for your valuable participation today. We appreciate your interest in sharing your knowledge and experience with the academic community of Colombia. From the United States, welcome to this panel, Mr. Timothy Carter, President of Second Nature, Mr. Ukaya Bush, Director of Public-Private Partnership from Partners of the Americas, who will lead as a moderator. From Colombia, welcome to this panel, Mr. Felipe Baena Botero, Rector of the Fundación Universitaria del Área Andina Pereira, and Mr. Juan Camilo Montoya Bossi, Rector of the Universidad Autónoma de Bucaramanga. This activity is carried out within the framework of the Viaje Global Initiative, an internationalization strategy at home that seeks to bring our university communities closer to different countries and to enhance ties of cooperation and learning, in this case, to strengthen relationships with the United States. Your questions can be written in the chat and will be resolved at the end of the conversation. We hope it will be a space of academic enrichment, and Dear Ukaya, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Luisa Fernanda, for that introduction and for the invitation to be here and moderate this important discussion with my colleagues from Second Nature and the Universidad Autónoma de Bucaramanga. Thank you, Juan Camilo, for being here with us today, and Felipe from the Fundación Universitaria del Área Andina. Wonderful to have you here and to be able to join this discussion with you from my seat at Partners of the Americas. Now, as we all know, and just before I hand off the mic to set the stage and give some context, as we know, climate change is the global issue of our time, and therefore must by force be a critical element of international education programming. It is something that all of our institutions are thinking about and tangling with. Sorry, I can hear the interpretation or something happening in the background. I don't know if that's okay. Thanks. I think that did it. Thank you. And scientists around the world are stating with ever growing clarity and urgency that that climate change is an issue that can no longer be ignored, that we are going to see that we are currently seeing the impacts of climate change in our day-to-day lives, and Latin America and the Caribbean are among the regions most vulnerable to those impacts. And so we all have a responsibility as residents of these regions, of these countries, to do everything that we can to address climate change. And I would say that institutions of higher education have both a unique responsibility and a unique ability to be important actors in addressing climate change, both through educating the leaders of tomorrow's workforce and our politics and private sector leaders, as well as serving as living laboratories for testing new solutions and convening stakeholders and policymakers, among a myriad other actions, and some we'll hear about today from our panelists. But I'm just so excited to have this discussion and to see that ASCUN is leading on this topic and being an active participant in the global effort to address climate change. So thank you all for being here with us today. With that, I'd like to invite our first panelist, Tim Carter, President of Second Nature, to share a little bit about what his organization, Second Nature, does and how they approach higher ed action on climate change. Tim?
Thanks, Ukiah. Thanks, Luisa, and the other conference organizers, ASCUN and others, and as well as my fellow panelists. It's an honor to be participating in this with you today. I'm coming to you from Cambridge, Massachusetts in the US. This is a place where higher education has a lot of long history. Right up the street from me is Harvard University, which has been here for hundreds and hundreds of years. And we like to also think about the history here in the US, at least, of the role the institutions play in actually creating problems, not just solving problems. So in our case here, many of our institutions are on lands that have formerly been occupied by indigenous communities. And so we want to respect those communities here. I'm on the native lands of the Nipmuc, Massachusetts, and Wampanoag peoples. And we want to acknowledge the genocide that pushed them out of this space, including the role that institutions like higher ed play in that. That said, we also know that our country, the US, has actually created many of the emissions that we're dealing with all over the world. And we want to be very explicit about that role that the global north can play in actually helping support and connect with and alleviate the problems that we in fact have caused. So we want to own that problem and also recognize that resources are often viewed as kind of a one-way street where we might think we have a lot of resources and other institutions or other countries don't have a lot of resources. I would actually argue that resources are just different. We don't have knowledge of Colombian assets in the way that you have knowledge of Colombian assets. And I would just say that through partnership is the way that we can connect both resources that we might have here in the US with resources that you might have in your countries, wherever you end up happen to be, in your communities. And it's through that partnership and collaboration, I think we can make a real difference. We, Second Nature, work both domestically here in the US and internationally. Domestically, we run a program that has about 450 colleges and universities that have a president or chancellor that has committed to climate action. And so that means they have a commitment to carbon neutrality in their operations. They have a commitment to all students having exposure to climate action as part of their student experience. And they have a commitment to increasing their climate research. So those are the three parts of our commitments. We've been running this program for 15 years. So it's the longest and largest voluntary commitment to climate action anywhere in any sector. Another program that we're a part of is the United Nations have run the Race to Zero campaign, and we've been helping lead the Race to Zero for colleges and universities. I know there's a number of Latin American, Caribbean colleges and universities that are part of the Race to Zero. There's about 1,000 universities and colleges all over the world that have committed to this Race to Zero for colleges and university campaign. That involves a pledge to decarbonize or get to net zero emissions actually by 2050, the year 2050 or sooner. And you have to pledge to do that. You have to actually take some steps to show, you have to plan, and then you have to take some actions. And we help run that program. So we're a network organization that works in the US and globally, and look forward to exploring how these partnerships can work itself out over the course of the next hour or so. Thanks, Ukiah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tim, and thank you for your excellent work there. Now, I'd like to invite Juan Camilo Montoya Bozzi, Rector de la Universidad Autónoma de Bucaramanga. Sorry, not supposed to switch to Spanish, but just for the name. It doesn't sound right to say it with an English accent. Come on. No, but please, thank you so much, Juan Camilo, for being here with us today, and I invite you to have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much to ASCUN, Partners of the Americas, Second Nature, and all the organizers of this conversation. I am the president of Unab in Bucaramanga. We are located in the northern eastern part of Colombia, quite close to the border of our country with Venezuela. We are a university that was created initially as a school, just a basic school 70 years ago here in our region. And that school evolved over time into higher education. And right now we are university of about 10,000 students, from including the school that it's continue in full operation and one of the best schools here in our metropolitan area, and then going over technological programs, undergrad programs, graduate programs, and also a few years ago we started our first PhD program in engineering, and actually we are about to start next year a second PhD program in sustainability. So we are a private university with a Colombian high quality accreditation since 2012, and very committed with the development of our region, with close ties to the private sector, to government agencies, and well, very glad to be here with all of you and having this conversation around climate change and the role of universities. I have to say also that I am not at all an expert, a technical expert in all of these topics, but I can work a lot in promoting and putting a lot of drive into this type of initiatives. So very, very interested also in learning more about second nature and how that network could be very useful for us in engaging even more in climate change initiatives. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Rector Montoya, Juan Camilo, gracias. Thank you. And now Felipe Baena from the Fundación Universitaria del Área Andina.
Thank you. Hello to everyone. Thank you to ASCUN and all the organizations which have made this possible. It is an honor for me to share this conversation with Mr. Carter, President of Second Nature, Mr. Montoya, Rector of Universidad Autónoma del Bucaramanga, and also Mr. Bosch, Director of Public-Private Partnership at Partners of America. It is also an honor to represent Andina in this important initiative, which allows us to share practices and visions with people and institutions from our country, in this case, or other place in the world like USA. I just want to tell you a little brief about Andina. We are a higher education institutions with almost 30,000 students. We right now are the fourth biggest private institution in Colombia. We make our presence in about 85% of the Colombian territory through on-campus, online, and blended education. We have 3 campuses located at Bogotá, Valledupar, and Pereira, where I am right now. We also have recently obtained the high quality institutional multi-campus accreditation, which is the maximum quality standard in Colombia. And we are ranked as the second best organization to work in Colombia according to Great Place to Work, which we are very proud of. We have declared as our mission to contribute to the sustainable development of the regions in the country with quality and relevance through the appropriation, application, transfer of knowledge, and also comprehensive and permanent training of people from a humanistic approach with critical and reflective thinking. We are very committed with generating real impact in our environment, and that's why I'm so glad to be here and also listening and learning about what other institutions here in Colombia and also from Second Nature are thinking and also are doing. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm really, really happy, glad to be here.
Thank you very much, Felipe. And I'll just say that the Área Andina has been a great partner to us at Partners of the Americas in the past, and we've just so enjoyed working with you. And Fernando Telles, who I see in the audience, and just thank you for your support of what we've done together over the past years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. And so I have a few questions that I'd like to get your thoughts on from the panel, and then at the end, we will have time for questions from the audience. And I want to encourage everyone at any point, if you have a question, just put it in the chat box. And at the end, when we've passed the discussion, we will answer as many of those questions as we possibly can. So go ahead and drop those in the chat at any point throughout the presentation, throughout the discussion. And now I think, well, for the sake of what's already done. Let's stick with the order. So Tim, if you'll give us your thoughts first on each question, and we'll pass to Juan Camilo and Felipe. You'll have the hard act of thinking of something original to say after two people have already had a chance to say as much as they can about any given topic. But thank you. So why, and I touched about it on this first question a little bit in my opening remarks, why, in your view, is it important for institutions of higher education to take action in the effort to tackle climate change? What are the unique contributions that these institutions can make? And I'll turn to you first, Tim.
Yeah, it's a great question. And maybe we can also cycle through the lead answers so we don't all, I don't feel like I need to go first every time. You know, what Felipe said really is at the core of it. Institutions need to be relevant. You know, that you have to have relevance as an institution if you want to attract the best students, if you want to attract the best faculty. We know students, especially, well, I can speak for here in the US, students care about working on problems that are facing the world or facing themselves in their real lives. And arguably one of the most important issues that is environmentally facing us, and maybe even beyond environmentally, is the issue of climate change. So if higher education institutions want to remain relevant, then they're going to have to, in some way across their institution, address this topic. We talk about it in kind of two ways. Our mission is to accelerate climate action in and through higher education. So in higher education often means their own, we say they need to practice what they teach. You can't just say, oh, everyone else needs to get rid of your carbon emissions and then you don't do it yourself. And so a big part of accelerating climate action in higher ed is actually taking that seriously, actually doing what you're teaching your students and doing research on is to decarbonize. But then through higher education, this is where you can make connections into the community in different ways. You can actually become a place where innovation happens, so you help solve challenges in the countries that you're a part of or the cities that you're a part of. And so all these ways in which you can use the assets of the university for something outside of the university goals. Again, I would come back to that topic of relevance. That makes you relevant to all these other partners and opens up so much possibility. So it's really a win-win. You're doing something for the planet, but then you're also, in fact, doing yourself a favor as an institution. I know presidents and rectors, you would know this, part of your role is to connect with external stakeholders, kind of be the face of the university. It's so much easier to tell that story when you have something that's actually relevant and connected to the lived experience of the people you're talking to. So I think that relevance is Felipe, is such a great point that you brought up.
Great. Juan Camilo?
Okay, adding to what Timothy has just mentioned about relevance, I would say also that the one very big reason for universities to be engaged and committed with tackling climate change is the ethical commitment of universities with the formation of next generations of professionals who have a clear understanding of the main sustainability concerns of humanity. At the end, we need several new generations with a different mindset in order to have a scale of action and new behaviors towards climate change. So that's the main issue that I would like to add to this question. Also, we have to promote a more comprehensive approach in our different programs into and around sustainability development goals. Climate change, of course, is a very, very big concern of humanity, but in general, addressing the whole scope of sustainability development goals is also a very big issue for universities right now. And again, the whole the different scopes and areas of work that climate change brings provides universities a very wide range of innovation opportunities. And applied research also is very, very important around climate change. And I would also underscore what Timothy just mentioned is a huge area of connection and engagement with the local reality, providing solutions from very maybe small applied projects or going into wider scale projects around our cities or countries. So those are kind of 3 or 4 big reasons that universities must have around climate change in the whole missionality of our institution.
Excellent. Felipe?
Yeah, first, I would like to say that taking account actions in the effort to address climate change is important for every person and organization. Sometimes, and I just was like listening before you're kind of saying something like this, the problem is, people think the problem is responsibility of the presidents of the big countries, and it is not like that. We have a really short time to reduce the emissions and guarantee our planet does not reach these 3 degrees projected for the next 50 years, and this warming problem will cause maybe tragedies and all things like that. So education is an essential factor in the global response to climate change, helping to understand and address its consequences. Higher education institutions must generate in their professionals, in the graduates, an integral way of their being, which generates critical thinking and conscious actions to impact positively their communities. In Andina specifically, we are working through our 3 substantive functions like educational, training, research, and social responsibility. We believe every student and graduate should understand his role and responsibility about climate change. This is why we created what we called the transformative seal, which includes 10 nodes, and one of them is sustainable development. Through this strategy, we guarantee, using our curriculum, that all students in every academic program have contents related to climate change and learn different strategies to mitigate it. And also, we have created academic programs directly linked to this issue. The technology in sustainable livestock production is a recent example. We are sure education in this sector is fundamental to achieve our goal of emissions reductions. Additionally, we are using other formats like our MOOC, massive online open courses. We have this MOOC in some other topics, but we have recently launched one in sustainable development goals, which we expect that will be a very useful tool to generate conscience massively. We expect to train 10,000 people in this year in a 48 course, and this MOOC is already available for free in the Andina website. The second is the ability to investigate, as you were saying before, linking to real problems, looking for solutions not only technical but social. We incentive our teachers and students to work on this kind of topics, informative and applied and applied research projects. And third, we think that through responsibility and social projection, we can work with communities, we can carry out projects focused on climate change and generate a greater reach. An example of this kind of project is right now being developed by our team in the Valledupar campus at Terra Grata Ciudadela de Paz. And this project focuses on the design of the solid waste utilization plan of the Tierra Grata village to reduce environmental pollution and impact of climate change. And also in Pereira, we recently opened a living lab, which main topic we're gonna work is transformative innovation. We wanna work with different companies in the real sector, and we always have this this focus to work on social and environmental and also economic development. We want to receive from them their problems, and using design thinking and others innovation methodologies, we want to work finding solutions. The first problem we're gonna work next month. We're gonna start very soon. We have a company here in Pereira called Frisbee. They have been working for many years in Colombia. They are a chicken company, really big, and they wanna reduce their footprint in their delivery in 14%, and we wanna help them in creating the whole process. So this is the way we think, like linking these three main factors is the way we think we can help and we can contribute to this problem in our country.
Can I say one thing, Ukaya, in response?
Sure.
So
Sure.
I think those are some great examples, very similar to what's in the US, around how to not just take the curriculum and learning as a given, what we do now is the only way to do it, and instead rethink how to apply it to this challenge. And I love those examples of ways in which education can happen, but instead of learning out of a textbook, why don't you learn in partnership with a business or in partnership with your community? Students love it. The community benefits from it, and the whole program can actually solve a problem in the world. And that's like such a beautiful example, I think, and a universal example of how education is uniquely positioned to do those things. You don't see businesses doing that together, really. You don't see governments doing that together. You see higher education actually stepping in to serve that role in a lot of ways. And I think that's a really powerful way our sector can help solve this, the challenge of the climate crisis.
I'm glad you highlighted that, Tim. It's excellent. The applied ways that institutions can work with communities and stakeholders to solve real problems. It's such an incredibly important avenue for climate action. Now, for those of you who are familiar with Partners of the Americas and the program that I work on, 100,000 Strong in the Americas, you'll know that we spend a lot of time thinking about international education and building stronger ties between the institutions in the US and those in our peer institutions in Latin America and the Caribbean. So I want to hear what you think about international education and climate change and that nexus, right? So international education raises unique challenges for curbing emissions because it involves international travel, which is itself a major carbon producer. And what methods have you used to mitigate the environmental impact of international education? And how have you harnessed international learning opportunities to strengthen climate education and climate action? So I just share that. And you're right, Tim, we don't have to start with you every time. If someone else would like to kick us off, please feel free.
Okay, well, let me make some comments here around international travel, and maybe I will make a question or ask Timothy for an additional comment. Of course, that all the things that we've learned with the pandemic and the remote mode of education that we've been working on over these 2 years, and this type of conversations, it's a huge a new way of engaging and connecting ourselves, and we have to continue promoting this type of connections on a day-to-day basis. And I think that all of our institutions have become more strict and in order to approve international travel, basically being very, very honest, more thinking around budgets and around savings and not that much around the climate change impact that we're going to make. And in Colombia also, the devaluation of our currency has also made a big impact around that. But we have to continue connecting ourselves as much as we can. and also getting, especially in a context like Latin America and specifically Colombia, we need more international engagement with different universities and different research centers that can provide us more new approaches and complement doing good connections for better projects. And so I think that using this type of remote tools is one big thing, and being more conscious about when it makes sense to travel and have face-to-face meetings. But I think that the big challenge of universities is more on innovations and applied research. Actually, Tim, I read a few months ago the Bill Gates book around how to avoid climate change, climate disaster. And he makes there a lot of very simple calculus around what has to happen in order to reduce to zero emissions and the impact of transportation, and within transportation, air travel. So the big challenges are around innovations of new ways to provide energy to our vehicles, to boats, to airplanes. And that's maybe the big challenge for universities and researchers and around of many disciplines to contribute to those type of solutions, and also becoming, all of us as citizens, more conscious and using different modes of transportation, maybe more on a very local basis within our cities or neighborhoods. So I think that the big contributions are going to be more around solutions, inventions, and improvements of the technology needed to having more electric transportations and things like that. So I don't know, Tim, what are your thoughts around this topic?
Very, very similar thoughts. I mean, until we decarbonize air travel, we're not going to get to the goals, the global goals that we need. So to me, the focus is more on decarbonizing air travel, and not just innovation, but also advocating and looking for policy change in, really what the airlines are starting to do anyway. And so pushing them to do more, I think, is a really important role, especially that rectors can play, maybe as far as advocates go, if you have influence over various decision makers. Here in the US, there's about 6 or 7 universities, the large universities, that have contracts with domestic airlines. So the domestic airlines want to reduce their footprint as well. And so the universities went to the domestic airlines and said, could we have a partnership where we provide carbon-free air travel using offsets temporarily for our students and faculty as they go to conferences, and that would actually help you meet your climate targets. But it's through that dialogue that some interesting ideas started to emerge. And I could imagine more of that happening in the future, and not just take for granted, well, the airlines will always be sources of carbon emissions, because they can't be. Like, we have to shift that. So very similar to what you were saying, Juan Camilo.
Excellent. Do you have some other thoughts you'd like to share, Tim, while we're on you?
Well, I think awareness is huge. So, a lot of people now are looking at use carbon offsets to offset their air travel, and they can actually do that creatively. So finding interesting offset programs that actually are student experiences. We have Colgate University is one of our universities that is carbon neutral. They met this neutrality goal, and they actually have an offset program where they do reforestation projects. I believe it's down in Chile, but they have students every summer come down and help with reforestation activity and monitor the progress there. So I think offsets kind of they're almost like a 4-letter word, like a bad thing inherently, but as a temporary bridge to ultimate decarbonization, I think there's a lot you can do there. And usually air travel is the thing right now that people want to act upon. And, because it's very visible, has a lot of impact. It's not a huge source of emissions, actually, for most people's footprints. It's not the dominant one, but there are things you can do even in the short term as we start to try to decarbonize. Felipe, I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest advantages brought by globalization in the last, I don't know, 20 or 30 years within higher education has been the increase in academic mobility in Colombia. I think it's great that we have students getting to travel to another countries, and we have the chance to receive students from Europe and North America. It's really great to have them here. I think it's been a really good thing that happened, but it is really important what is happening, what been happening in the last years with COVID. Is essential that within the world that we live in a higher education institutions, we provide students as many opportunities as possible to become global citizens, because as the world has less physical and communications barriers due to the pandemic, there has also been a higher demand for global engagement, resulting in global citizens who seek a sense of belonging to a world community rather than a small or local one, like, for example, a city like Pereira. This also adds to the opportunity for teachers to learn and grow through empowerment of the intercultural classrooms by creating spaces for students to seize opportunity of diversity and global interaction. Some of the strategies that have been implemented in our school in order to reduce the environment impact and also the budget, because I agree with Juan Camilo, we have to be really honest, of international education have been some of the following. We have this Viaje Global is an internationalization strategy at home that seeks to favor and promote academic and cultural spaces for the academic community, with the support and participation of international allies like Q, like Second Nature, Partners of America. We have been working together, as you say before. This strategy started in 2020 with Ecuador and have continued with other countries such as Argentina, Brazil, Canada, Peru, and now we have this really nice opportunity to be working with USA. This strategy was developed to improve and strengthen the formation of global citizens through an articulated scheme of internalization activities at home. In Andina, we also had a second strategy we call virtual international collaboration, which was born as a strategy which whose purpose is to strengthen collaborative work opportunities with our allied institutions through creation of new spaces for interaction and academic collaboration. For example, in 2020, more than 60 activities were carried out working with leading international higher education institutions. This strategy has been very successful due to the topics, the dynamic talks presented by professors, and it has been considered a very useful space which creates a stronger channels of interinstitutional cooperation. So I think the pandemic forced us to explore the infinite possibilities that became available through the use of technology as the best tool for learning amidst the chance of working and studying in face-to-face modality to a 100 virtual or online learning. The implementation of the strategies mentioned above gave us the opportunity for global exchange with other universities, professors, and students from foreign countries, which seemed very difficult, almost impossible for the academic community to reach previous to this COVID-19. Knowledge, it is appropriate to mention that there are factors in international education that can never be replaced. Amongst them is the importance of human context, to have a deeper understanding of a specific cultural context and exchange. We as I say before, we will always love to have more and more students from United States, Europe, Africa, Asia in Pereira, because we like to show them what we're doing here, and we like to share our culture, and sometimes you just can't replace that human contact. Therefore, it is essential that students continue to be in touch with a new reality and culture through the use of international education, but the future of our students worldwide seems far less restricted as opportunities for intercultural exchange increase while having a really lower environmental impact. So I think the future looks really good for international education, and it's gonna depend on us and as you said before, the policies and how we think we can interact with people from other countries in the world.
Excellent. I think that's right on. And what I love about all three of your comments is that there is no interest in abandoning international education. There's such a demand and a need for global citizens, as you said, Felipe, and as you said, Camilo. We have to connect. We have to keep connecting, and the students need those opportunities. And in fact, I think global education opportunities are what will lead students to appreciate the importance of addressing global challenges like climate change and others. So thank you all for what you're doing on that front. One final question, and then we'll pass the floor to the audience and hear from them, see what they're interested in learning from you all. I'm curious, at each of your institutions, what are the climate action accomplishments that you are most proud of, and why? Tell us a little bit about that. I'll open it to anyone who wants to go first.
Your turn, Felipe.
Thank you. I think I just have mentioned some of them before. Maybe I will add some others. We created our MOOC on the Sustainable Objectives Development, which we expect a really big impact, because we think we can reach more than 10,000 people knowing about the 17 objectives, and especially like introducing to their own lives. We always dream to do that, like every person every morning when they wake up, they try to think the way they live, how they're impacting the sustainability of the world. So this is one of the strategies we want to implement. We offset our carbon footprint. You said before, we can just limit to putting in our curriculum and teach it. We have to implement it in our own operations. So we offset our carbon footprint with more than 2,000 trees planted in our headquarters. We've done that because we know we can help. We have water consumption reduction by 25% in the physical plant nationwide. This is also a good news from the pandemic, because we didn't have to come here, and we help with that and some other strategies we have implemented. We put into our ADN the Área Andina in our curriculum. As I said before, we have education spaces, environmental. We have implemented in the recent few years. Every student in every program have to take content about climate change and sustainable development. We also have promoted efficient use of paper in our academic and administrative activities, with a reduction of 38% less than previous year. We have implemented solar panels in 2 of our cities already, Bogotá and Valledupar. We're gonna do it soon. We're gonna do the same thing soon in Pereira. We also have implemented circular economy models. We have a reduction of our solid, what we have here. And this makes us very proud also. So we have done like many things. I already told you about projects we have in the academic, but in Área Andina, ourselves have been working in this kind of projects too.
Excellent examples. Thank you, Felipe.
I can go ahead with some comments around some accomplishments and initiatives. Well, first of all, from this conversation, I'm very interested in learning more about second nature Timothy, and the initiatives that you are working on. We've signed the Global Pact of the United Nations and also a recent program of the Colombian Environment Ministry of Carbon Neutral Program. We are in the process of putting together that program for our university. And so this is also a big challenge for us to go ahead and develop this carbon neutral program. But also we've been working in different academic initiatives directly from our programs. We've had energy engineering program for already around 20 years. It's an undergrad program, and the main focus of those engineers, especially in recent years, is more around renewable energies. So we've been providing providing education to these new professionals around renewable energies for several years already. Also, I mentioned at the beginning, in alliance with 3 other universities here from Colombia, we've got the approval of the Ministry of Education recently to offer a new PhD program in sustainability. We are in the process of preparing that initial cohort for that PhD program. And in 2023, we expect to activate those with the first students to arrive to that program. Also, I want to highlight that over the past maybe year and a half, we've been developing a cooperation, a non-refundable cooperation project with the IDB, Inter-American Development Bank, and the Ministry of Environment here in Colombia, and is around formation and capability, strengthening of capabilities to fight deforestation. So with that project, we've been developing online courses around fighting deforestation. We're in the process of finalizing those courses and putting them available to a lot of people around our country and abroad. And from that learnings and initiatives with this project, we are also in the process of asking for approval for a new technical program, undergrad program at our university. Let me say this in Spanish. It's a program that will be named Técnico Profesional en Perito Ambiental. That will be some technical professionals around doing assessments and kind of helping out controlling environmental conditions around our country. So we are committed with those academic programs around sustainability, fighting deforestation, with the help of IDB in that case. And also on another front, again with the energy engineering program, we've been working with UNIDO, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, in a program around energy efficiency in industries, in manufacturing companies around our region, and how to provide them advice and to improve their levels of energy consumption and being more productive, and also contribute for climate change measurements. Finally, well, we have a research center that it's been very important for our university for several years, around 15 years, working around bioeconomy, environmental biotechnology, and sustainability methodologies such as life cycle assessment. So there are several areas of work here at Unab, but I look forward to make progress with our carbon neutral program within Unab to put together those academic initiatives and also very day-to-day and operational efforts that will help us to do our part around climate change. Thanks.
Yeah, I just close, not being at a single institution, talking about our network activity. One of the things we did a few years ago was this. Our theory of change has been, if senior leaders commit to climate action, it will make everything else that institution does easier. They'll be able to meet their goals better. It'll actually align with institutional strategy. But we didn't know whether that was true. That was our theory of change. And then a few years ago, we actually have data. We collect data on all of our member campuses every year. And we found that actually relative to we call them signatory campuses. Well, relative to non-signatory campuses, signatory campuses reduce their carbon emissions by 50% and used 27% less energy than non-signatory campuses. So that was good evidence that our theory actually does seem to hold some water. So the first thing I would say is that probably the thing we're most proud of is that over 800 senior leaders have made this commitment here in the US. And there are other avenues for senior leaders to do that across the world. So I know that both Felipe and Juan Camilo have talked about activities, but if you don't have a commitment on your campus as an audience member, and you might be at a camp, you might be a faculty member at a campus, if your senior leader hasn't made that commitment, it's really a good first step. And you can do that both just on your own, or I was going to put in the chat I mentioned the Race to Zero campaign. I'll just throw it in here so everyone has access to it. So this is the Race to Zero for colleges and universities, which effectively does what our program here in the US does, which says we're going to actually decarbonize by 2050 or sooner, and we're going to take steps to make that happen. So if your institution hasn't done that, that allows for the senior leader to actually take a really visible and active role. And then what falls out of that, let me just show you. Sorry, Yukai, I'm going to throw a bunch of links in here. The second link is our public reporting. So this is all in English, apologies for that, but it shows you across the world who has committed to take climate action, and for our schools at least, what progress they've made toward those goals. So that's, I think, a second thing that we're really proud of. And the third thing, this is the last link I'll stick in here, is just last week, the consortium of universities in the state of Arizona, this is Arizona State University, University of Arizona, Northern Arizona, partnered with their local utility as well as local governments. So we had state senators speaking on this, saying that in collaboration with each other and using the resources that they will all bring, private sector, public sector, university, they will have this consortium pushing towards carbon neutrality in their state. And that's really kind of a perfect example of what can happen if you're working in partnership outside of yourself, but you also have your own goal. The universities would not have done that if they didn't have their own goal that they were aiming for, because they don't really have the motivation to do it. And so by setting your own target, by elevating that to the senior level, and then looking for opportunities to partner with others, that's where you see some really fascinating, interesting collaborations happen. I think we see that more and more, this alignment opportunity, as kind of the future where higher ed's going here in the US. And obviously the stories that y'all have told about what's happening in Colombia are inspiring for us to know that this is also taking place around the world.
Excellent. Thank you, Tim and Felipe, Juan Camilo. Many excellent examples of climate action at work. I look forward to reviewing all of your links, Tim. I'm very, very excited to look through those. And that last example in particular sounds really intriguing. I want to learn more about that. Let's pass now to questions from the audience. And we'll start with one from Carlos Clavijo. He says, the first thing we have to do as universities is to recognize that universities are an important source of CO2 emissions. This allows the development of verifiable CO2 mitigation strategies from the operation of the campus as well as in the education of the students. What do you think universities should do to mitigate their admissions? And I'll perhaps rephrase, what are some of the best avenues for mitigating emissions that each of you have seen at your institutions or at others?
Can I comment on one first point that he makes? And that's a good one. That is, if you don't track it, you don't measure it, and then you don't know what to do. So I think tracking, doing the greenhouse gas inventories are very important. And here in the US, at least, there was a parallel effort about 15 years ago that was started by cities. There was a climate commitment for cities, and they actually didn't end up tracking their emissions. And that program is no longer, it didn't last. Mainly because that tracking piece wasn't there, the data piece wasn't there. So I think it's a great point, it's very important. And then you can wrap around all the assets of the university to help accomplish that, which is what we've been talking about for the last hour. I see both of those things going in parallel, but a very important point to track emissions.
From my side, I don't have more comments at the time, and I think that Timothy has summed up the key managerial and leadership key decisions that our institutions have to make. And from our side, we're in the point to start getting more in depth in what are our footprint, and besides the other initiatives that I mentioned, as an organization, we have to put together that plan and that monitoring process. Thank you, Tim, for those insights.
Yes, and from our view, we've been talking about this the last hour, as Tim said. I think it's very important what you said before about creating this culture and this responsibility from our senior leaders to understand and commit with the problem. If it doesn't happen, it's really difficult to communicate with other people, to the teams, both the teachers and the administrative teams. It is very difficult. So that should be the very first step, starting by that. And then I think working on the culture, being able to transfer this kind of knowledge to the people, and also trying to make and understand how important is this for them and for their children and for the future is very important. I think measuring is key, like what we're doing right now, what are important or most critical gaps that we have to work, and then start working on projects, and let's say, let's do this for this year, let's do that for the next year, and implement like specific actions and get to the point. We just can't spend the life talking about it. We have to go to the point and work on it. And I would like to know, as you have said before, the links you have shared for us. I'm gonna start investigating and researching, because I would like to make part of this kind of networks you are like promoting today. So working in networks and having the chance to learn from other universities and other people in the world will be really important for us too.
Yeah. Let me just say one thing, Yukaya, too, in the same thread here, but I think one of the lessons for us, one of the things we would be cautious about, is that whenever you make the commitment, and what people tend to focus on is the operational emissions footprint, then very quickly it's just operations people that get involved, just your facilities people. And that can be a real problem, because then the leadership that the university provides is very quickly this narrow operational question. And that's a problem for us. We have a lot of operational staff. Then the academics aren't as involved. The students aren't as involved. And you want to have everybody involved in addressing the issue. So just a word of caution is, don't just make it just an operational decarbonization effort. It is that, but it's much more than that. And so that's something we've learned, and I think hopefully the audience would take away as what people really value about higher education is not just that you're decarbonizing, that's true, but also you have all these other things that you can bring to help solve this global challenge beyond your campus footprint.
Excellent point. We hear next from Edwin Ernesto Zafra Reyes, who says, do you consider that university research on environmental issues should provide tangible solutions and not just remain in reports? I think that's a comment on the pure science versus applied science and research side. So open that to comments.
I think that it's climate change is a huge opportunity for applied research, and let me cite again the Bill Gates book around breaking down the whole problem of carbon emissions, all the type of sources, and how he approaches and he mentions some key initiatives or venture companies that are doing some progress, or so it's a very wide range of applied research that we are facing here. So that's a lot of also entrepreneurial opportunities, I think, that climate change offers.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you can't get away from new knowledge as a practice of research, as an outcome of research is really important. You also have to say, well, what is that new knowledge for, or what is higher education for? And if it's very difficult to say, well, it's kind of a leading question. Is it just for reports, or is it just for publications? This is kind of an area that's been in discussion here in the US for years, is about what does motivate faculty, and it's publications and research grants. And if you change those incentives to not just be publications in an academic journal, but actually solutions on the ground, what if you would say to your climate faculty, well, the way to get tenure is actually if you install 100 megawatts of solar, that would be a very different proposition for folks than if you publish in 5 different journals. And so people are starting to think about, how do you credit that activity that actually is creating solutions in the world, and instill that credit into the incentive structure for the research community. It's very difficult. Talk about an entrenched group. It's a very difficult nut to crack, but it's clearly a place we could go, and some leverage that university presidents and chancellors can have, but also provosts and chief academic officers and faculty senates and those sorts of things tend to be the governance levers there. So working with them is really important to see how you can make those tweaks.
I love that. That's excellent. Felipe, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I think we need both. Traditional research methods like have this capability to go deep to the problem and to understand causes of what is making this warming and can get to new solutions, but also going to real problems with organizations like companies, universities, communities is a really big challenge. As I was saying before, we have created this new way of tackle the problem and a living lab, and we are bringing methodologies like design thinking, innovators method, and others, which we wanna work with people, with the people who owns the problem. So I think if we combine both, we have the chance to go deep to the problems, to understand causes, and then if we implement this kind of new methodologies, or not so new, but methodologies for this problem, we think we'll have a good complement.
Excellent. I'm going to take moderator's prerogative and ask one of my own questions. But before I do that, I just want to encourage anybody in the audience, if you have any other questions, just drop those in the chat and we'll share those with the panel. My question for you three, though, is what is the role of higher education in the advocacy and public policy space? And I know a lot of institutions hesitate to appear political and to get mixed up in that, especially public institutions. But I think, if there's anything the scientific community at large has learned over the last 30 years, it's that political neutrality can come back to bite you, right? And so, what are the ways that higher ed institutions can be active participants and leaders and advocators for climate policies at the local, state, or department or national level?
I'd love to hear from my Colombian colleagues on this one, because I think the U.S. might not provide a good template or model in a variety of ways. I do know here in the U.S. that universities lobby for things all the time. They're very active politically, even though they don't say they're active politically. But if they have a research center that gets federal dollars to do those research, I guarantee you they have a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. who is making sure that research center gets funding every year. So it's not that they don't lobby, it's just that they don't view climate lobbying as the important thing. And so what we try to do is actually shape, here in the US, the states actually have a lot of control over certain things. And so it just depends on what we talk about. The federal government controls certain things, the states control certain things. And we have to be very surgical about how the leadership of those universities is used. But the leadership really matters, especially our public universities have huge influence over their local legislators or elected officials. And so they're very careful about what they'll advocate for, but they will advocate. And we've had good examples of cases where they've advocated for things that are important for climate, and it made a difference. Many of the elected officials graduated from those same universities. And so they're very emotionally connected to whatever the president would say to them. But I'm really curious about the Colombian example, because there may be, very different power dynamics and structures there that wouldn't translate that well from the U.S.
Well, I would make a comment around more than lobby or around interests, direct interest of universities for research initiatives or things like that. It's more around the local debates regarding extractive industries and different projects, oil companies, developments or mining projects, or in Colombia, that's a very personal take on this. We need to continue diversifying our economy. We need a stronger state that can provide resources for poor communities that we have around our country. And also we have to protect, of course, the different ecosystems and the environment and the biodiversity strength of Colombia, which is very, very significant. So in general, my point around the role of universities in public debates regarding environmental issues is that we should provide as much evidence-based evaluations and more contribute to have more productive conversations within our country around the convenience or not of developing one project or the other, and not getting into polarized positions and banning projects because with no reasons, and more kind of the emotions and the political causes of any type of ideological side. So in Colombia, we need to try and find a balance and how to address in a more objective ways this type of situations, and in certain ways how to analyze if a company that is let's say promoting oil developments with doing fracking, for example. That's a topic right now in Colombia. Ecopetrol, the state-owned oil company, is authorized to do some preliminary projects to verify the whole environmental study that they've made and assess the risks in a more concrete way. And after that, if those initial preliminary projects, pilot projects, go well, they would be in a position to move ahead with bigger developments. So giving the space to have those more objective conversations and being very realistic that the country needs more resources to provide public goods for poor communities around the country, and of course at the same time being very careful about protecting sensitive ecosystems. So my comment would be around those. That would be a key contribution from universities to get engaged in those conversations and providing as much evidence as they can, and inviting communities and companies, and private sector companies or public companies to have those very frank and open conversations to get hopefully to the best decisions for the country as a whole.
Do you influence your elected official? Like, does the rector position hold specific weight with elected officials there in the same way that it does here?
Not really. Well, in my case, this is a private university, and we have a board of directors, and the board of directors names the president for a term or without a term. In my case, we don't have a specific term. In public universities, they have a more structured democratic process to elect the president of the university, but also the board of the university that has of public universities, they have the representation of the Ministry of Education, of the state government, etc. And that board names the president of public universities for, in those cases, with a term, a very specific term, 3 or 4 years, it depends. But yes, they have more political exposure and more political connections, and even though in general presidents of public universities are academics from their own university, that they go higher the ranks.
Interesting.
Felipe, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think definitely the future of a region should be designed and built by the governments, the private sector, and obviously the universities working together with the society. As an example, in Risaralda, which is the state I'm living in, the capital of Pereira, we have this commission which works for the competitiveness of the department. And for example, this year we are updating our plan. And updating our plan means we have to think, we have to make prospection, thinking perspective, thinking of in the future of the region, and like deciding which are the main plans and the main factors we're gonna work. From this point, like universities and, for example, Área Andina, we're working together to guarantee that this development is not only economic. We have to guarantee the social point of view, and obviously the environmental point of view. In planning and getting involved to this kind of planning events is a very important point where we can start. And then from this moment to the next years, we're gonna have to work on big projects which guarantee the development of the region. And some of them we are trying to promote have very close link, are very linked to sustainable development. So I think it's a way we can work together. It's a way where we can like be involved, and we should always be there. Unfortunately, we are like, as Juan Camilo said, we're a private higher institution, but we have a history here. We have a good number of students. We have a good numbers of graduates, and our words and our thoughts are well received, and we can participate of this kind of moments and projects. So I think we have to do it. We are doing it right now, and I hope we're going to have to wait what's going to happen in the next months and years, but I hope we can make our contribution to the development of this region, thinking always on this kind of points like climate change.
Excellent. Well, with a few minutes left and no more questions from the audience, I think maybe just invite each of you to make, if you have any final closing thoughts or comments you'd like to share. We have a minute or two each for you guys to share any final thoughts you might have. Why don't we start with you, Tim? Sure.
I mean, it's been really inspiring, Felipe and Juan Camilo, to hear your examples. I mean, I knew there was going to be things that were new to me, and so it's really great to be inspired by that. I also know collaboration is hard. Sometimes it takes longer. It takes more work to do a collaborative effort than it does to just do it on your own. But we'd love to explore possibilities and exchanges, whatever that might look like, between members in our network. You probably already have partnerships with some of them, and then your institutions. So we'd love to continue this conversation as a result of that. And I think there's lots of institutions that we work with that would also, I'm just reflecting what they would probably say anyway. So look forward to what that looks like in the future.
Yeah, well, from my side also, thank you very much for this invitation. And for me, it has been a very constructive conversation, learning more about second nature and the type of initiatives that you are committed with, and examples also, progress that Área Andina has made. So this is a permanent exchange of challenges and initiatives and mistakes and all that we face in this process, but being committed with these key challenges is the main thing. And these conversations, of course, provide more engagement and consciousness of all of us towards climate change. So thank you very much for the invitation to ASCUN and Partners of the Americas and all the organizers.
Thank you, Timothy, Juan Camilo, Uki. I'm not really sure how to pronounce Ukia. You have to help me in Spanish. Yeah, I've seen you speak good Spanish, so help me with that. Thank you to Second Nature, to Unab, to Partners of America, ASCUN, all the people and organizations who have made this possible. It's been inspiring, as you say, interesting. We hope we have more spaces like this. We can start sharing our views, and we can make it real by implementation of projects in the different regions in Colombia, and I hope with collaboration with people from our countries. So have a really good day, and thank you for the invitation.
Excellent. Well, I'll end. Just thank you all so much for joining this panel, for sharing your expertise, and for the leadership that you've all shown at your respective institutions to drive climate action in all the ways that universities are uniquely positioned to do so. And as you said, now it's time to get to work, Felipe, and manos a la obra a todos. And let's all do what we can, where we can, and we'll get there eventually. And thank you, ASCUN, Laura, Luisa Fernanda. Thank you so much for this invitation to speak and be part of this excellent initiative out of ASCUN. And I put it in your hands now to close us out.
Thank you, Ukaya. And I would like to say that Partners of the Americas is a leader of climate change with projects that enrich this work around the world. They are our partners and allies, and from now, Second Nature as well. Many thanks for sharing your knowledge and experience and give us ideas about how to approach it from the higher education and to motivate us to know more about this topic and take advantage of our strengths. Thanks to our rectors, panelists for this excellent dialogue, and thanks to the brilliant moderator. Thank you to the audience for your attendance here in Unab on YouTube, and the recording will be uploaded on the ASCUN YouTube channel. And good afternoon, and see you soon in a new opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye to all.